Hello, friends. This is Scott, and we're down at the hobby farm for my last weekend visit. I think this is video number 3 of what I've got accomplished. I've got a couple more videos probably. But the principal at my school garden, Mr. Penn, gave me some of these red skin Klondike Rose potatoes that had sprouted. So he had a bunch that somebody gave him, and then they got beyond useful condition. So he gave me a whole sack, and here they are, and they're all sprouted out and ready to roll. Probably beyond where they should be before they got planted, but we'll go ahead and put them in the ground today. I'm counting them here as I'm kind of going through them, and I think there's 20, if I remember correctly. So that's a good number of russets. Now, russets are not my favorite potato. You know, I grew up in the Midwest, and that's all we ate was russet potatoes. And I love baked potatoes, don't get me wrong. They're great for French fries and other types of eating. But I found in my older years that Yukon Golds and Pontiac Reds are more creamy and tasty. And so, you know, although russets have been, the majority of the staple of my potatoes my whole life, I'm kind of transitioning away from them, and the fact that they don't generally grow as well for me as the other potato varieties. Now I also plant many different varieties, including purples and blues and minis and fingerlings and all this other stuff. And with Mr. Penn giving me that big bag of 20 russets, that was unplanned. So I'm going to go for russets this year, and I did buy a little bit of the Yukons and the red Pontiacs that I'm also going to plant down here, but the russets are going to be the majority of the potatoes that we try to grow this year. Now, if you remember last year, I grow, you can see them kind of in the back corner of the video there, those black plastic bins. That's what I usually grow my potatoes in the city. And, I've been doing that for many, many years. But I find that now that I have more property, I'm just going to plant in ground because I can get a bigger harvest. And the potatoes grow better in ground than they do in containers. You can grow them in containers, you can grow them in straw, you can grow them in a lot of different things. But the soil is the best way to go. The downfall of growing in the soil is when you dig them up, you end up cutting some because you don't know exactly where they're at. So anyway, the digging will be the delicate part at the end of the year. But right now, the digging's getting a little harder because this is where the mulch was that I pulled off. And the ground is still pretty cold. It's not frozen, but it's pretty stiff. So I'm going to dig 2 rows for the russets because, again, there's 20, I believe, 20 seed potatoes. So I'm going to dig the first row, and then I'll get that planted, and then I'll cover them up with the dirt from the second hole and kind of work my way around and get them all in the ground. Now, as you see here, I'm digging in the ground, and this kind of defeats the purpose of my no-dig gardening method of my lasagna layering. But sometimes this is a brand new garden. It's the second year, and I'm going to do a little bit of digging. When I have more soil in here and more compost, I can probably just get away with raking stuff aside and putting the potatoes in. What I'm going to do though is just dig an initial hole. Because these are sprouted pretty significantly. I'm going to get them in the ground. I'll cover them up, and then I will be bringing in other layers as they grow. So I keep mounding the dirt up around them, which will then the potatoes will continue to grow and they'll continue to root into the soil as you add it on top of the potatoes as they grow. You don't want to smother them. As soon as they come up, leave a little bit of top growth exposed, but then you can just kind of mound them up as you go. And I'll mound up from the side, so I'll have little pathways on each side of the bed, and I'll just make kind of little trenches as I take that soil and scoop it up. As you see on the side there'll be the little trenches. But that was the first row, and I think I had 13 holes, something like that. So I have a few less holes to go on the next row. But again, dug them, they're not deep, but these have significant sprouts on them, and I don't want them to be exposed while it's still going to be getting cold. So I'm just, very gingerly, as you see here, putting the seed potatoes in the holes. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. I'm trying to get them so that they're laying down in the hole, so that the sprouts are going to take a little while to start to green up and break the soil. And so there, as you see, the first row is just stuck in there. And all I'm going to do now is just pull soil over them till they're totally covered. And then again, as they grow, I will be adding more soils, more compost, and get back to the lasagna method and just keep adding materials. So you see I start with the shovel, and I'm just going to cover them up. And again, this isn't anything that's difficult to do. Potatoes are very forgiving crops. If the top sprout and then we have a really hard freeze, that can damage the potatoes, but I've got them deep enough. I think it'll take a couple of weeks for them to shoot up out of the top, and that should be plenty of time, I think, to get the soil temperatures up to where they need to be. So we're not going to have any disasters for the potato crop this year. So we'll see. Potatoes last year, I grew them in above ground in the bins, and I didn't have a lot of soil in them, and we had cold temperatures, and they were fine. So again, I was a little disappointed with the harvest last year. It wasn't great, but I think this year we're gonna have a significant harvest. I just hope they're pretty good sized potatoes. Now, as you notice, I don't cut my seed potatoes. Some people do. They'll cut them and they'll plant them in pieces with several eyes on each piece. I find that for me, it's just better to throw a whole seed potato in, because you can get some rot and things like that if you cut them and you put them right in the ground. You can kind of let them dry out, or scab off, as they call it. But I just don't waste my time with that. I think the bigger the seed potato, the bigger plants you're going to get, the more healthy plants, and they're going to get bigger potatoes overall. So I plant the whole seed potato. But these are a lot bigger, as you'll see, than the ones that I plant with the Yukon Gold and the red Pontiacs. They're still pretty good sized seed potatoes, but they're not this big. Russets are good sized potatoes. And I'm hoping I can get some Whoppers in here, because I do love baked potatoes with butter and sour cream. And it's one of my all-time favorites. And we're hoping that we'll have plenty of that. So we'll see how that goes. Now we're moving on to the right are the Yukon Golds. That's what they look like. And they're significant potatoes. I bought the bigger seed potatoes, and those are the red Pontiacs. And I got 10 of each, and so there'll be another 20. So I'll have 20 russets, and I'll have 10 of each of the other two varieties this year. I wasn't going to plant that baked potatoes this year, but we got them. And so sometimes you just have to adapt. Now, this is a very initial bed. I just barely started making this bed. All I did was put cardboard down, and I screened some soil, and I don't know, there's probably 15 wheelbarrows of soil in here. I haven't put any compost or anything else, which is perfect, because after I bury these in, I'm just going to keep adding compost on top of this, and then I'll do the lasagna method, and I'll just keep adding fertility to the top, and hopefully there's enough fertility in the screen soil below to have a decent harvest. Simply cover them up. And again, very forgiving. But as the plants grow, I'm going to keep adding material to this and just keep mounding them and mounding them. And then when I get done with the potato crop, I can spread it all out, and then I have a perfectly good bed for next year to plant something else. As always, last step is water everything in really good. I didn't have mulch to mulch this in today. I could have grabbed some leaves. I didn't bother. I want the soil to warm up a little bit. But that's all it is. Potatoes are a very easy crop, very forgiving crop, but you can get a lot of food from them. So try them, and try them in ground this year. Either that or in containers if you'd like. And either way, you'll get potatoes, but I find the in-ground works the best. Thanks for watching. If you like what you see, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you.